everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Put It Together Live. I'm Daniel G. Garza, your host. I want to welcome everybody who's watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Do us a favor if you share this on your page so that other folks can watch along with you. If you're watching us on YouTube, scroll down, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. It'll let you know every time there's a new show on the air. Remember, we got stuff here pretty much every day of the week. We got horoscopes on Mondays, so go check those out. Kristen and Daniel show on Wednesdays, Zodiacs on Fridays, and Put It Together at its regular time on Saturday mornings. But if you hit that bell, you get notified when there's shows like this today, a special Monday episode. Today's guest is very special. I know, I say that every time. You're like, all your guests are special, but they are, because some of these have become friends. Some of these folks I follow. Some of these folks I stalk to make sure they come on my show. So let me read you the bio for today's guest. Toni Morrison is an Emmy-award-winning producer and journalist, serving as the Senior Director of Communications for GLAAD, the world's leading LGBTQ advocacy organization, elevating visibility and representation for LGBTQ people and issues across TV, film, journalism, and more. Toni brings with him more than a decade of storytelling, producing for top network talent, news programs, and shows at CNN, ABC, and Disney, ABC's parent company. Toni joins GLAAD after exiting his post at ABC's Good Morning America, where he oversaw the brand's social and digital strategy as a senior producer. At ABC, much of Toni's work focused on amplifying LGBTQ stories. He spearheaded the creation of the news organization's first employee resource group for its LGBTQ journalists and allies, and was part of the LGBTQ leadership across Disney that helped the company navigate challenges around Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. He also served as a co-host for Disney's official podcast, D23 Inside Disney, and currently hosts Plus Live's media series, Truth Be Told, shredding stigma for others like him who are living happy, healthy, and undetectably with HIV, inspiring all to discover their superpowers in their own story. With that, let me bring Toni onto the... Hey, Toni.
Hey. Wow, what an intro. Thank you for having me.
That's what we do around here. We make people look really good.
I love it.
How are you?
I'm so good. You know, it is the week after Pride Month. A lot of us who are in queer advocacy especially are able to rest a little bit in this holiday week. So I'm finding some time for self this week and to rest and recoup after Pride Month, especially after a very wild end of last week.
You're a busy man. For anybody who follows you on social media knows that. Ever since I knew about you, I followed you. Everybody, and you know this because every time I've seen you, I'm a fan of your work. You stay pretty busy. How do you balance, before I get into all the big questions, but how do you balance your on camera or your outside persona with your inside persona?
Yeah, I mean, this has really been for me an evolution of balance, right? And I think that it's been a journey for me of really trying to create boundaries. I've realized that boundaries are for you and not for other people. So it's creating boundaries across all levels of life. It's not taking on too much at work professionally, and it's also not taking on too much professional or personally. And it's also being able to be mindful of your time and your energy and not putting your energy in people, places, or things that are not going to serve you. I have a pretty solid morning routine that I know that if I don't hit that routine, it's going to be a rough day. But I really try to listen. I worked in morning TV for 10 years. And I've had to get up anywhere from at midnight to 3, 4, or 5 a.m. in the morning. And now that I'm in a little bit more of an office schedule, I feel like if I could do that past life, getting up overnight for work, I can do anything. So I get up in the morning. I do I do my workouts, I make my smoothies, I read my Brene Brown, I get some meditation in to kind of start the day. And it's really important for me to start the day with that kind of tone, because you just don't know what you're going to get, especially in the media and advocacy work that I am in. It's very go, go, go. It's very agile. You have to move very quickly according to whatever news cycle or projects you're working on. So my mental health and mental tone is very important to me, and starting the day to set that tone is really important.
And it sounds like graveyard shifts. I remember working graveyard shifts in different jobs, and it takes a different mentality than waking up at 9:00 in the morning. But one thing that I learned, and I tell people this after 60 years of being clean and sober, something that I learned in rehab was make your bed before you, as soon as you get up. Like the first thing you do is make your bed. And that for me is such a mental cycle. If the bed is not made, I feel like my whole day is thrown off. So
100%. And you know what's interesting is that was really embedded into my life and brain at a very young age. My dad growing up was a military dad, and it was a lot of, in a very literal and metaphorical way, making your bed in the morning was a sign of discipline and self-control in a way, but really discipline. And I found later on in adulthood, to come home to an unmade bed really does something to your mental health, you know. And there's a lot of metaphorical parallels to that as well.
Yeah, I totally get it. So for everybody who always wonders how I met my guest, Tony and I were featured. Let me put up the copy here. Tony and I were featured in the Plus Magazine's Top 25 Advocates of the Year. I can't believe this is 2 years ago. This is 2021.
Oh my goodness. What a cover.
And there he is. And I'm proud to say that that's how I first came to it. And at first, I have my copy here, which I should have brought with me the last time I saw you.
Oh my gosh.
Here's the copy. So here's Tony. There's a lot of really cool pictures of you inside. So if you don't have the copy, you can find it online. But there's some really good pictures of Tony's live. You can see how busy he is. And of course, I have to brag a little bit because here I am, third spot on the magazine.
Come on.
Third. And I'm in pretty good company. I'm next to Trinity K. Bonet right there. So hey, what
an addition. I love that. I have to find my hard copies. I know they're somewhere here in this apartment.
I have like 10.
That is so flattering, and thank you for showing that. And congrats to you also. What a year that was. Oh my goodness.
That was an amazing. And then that's the same year that Tony was honored the award at Radiant Health Centers, which is where I'm part of the board and the chair of the Client Advisory Committee. So I remember, you probably don't know the story because we hadn't had time. So before we get into you, so when I found out that they were approaching you for it, I ran and gave them like the magazine. I was like, look, we're in the same magazine. Like, oh my God, this was meant to be. And I was so excited. And then I was able to get the goodie bags to you and Allison Argram, who was the other person that received the award that year. But I was so excited to meet both of you. But I was more excited to meet you in a bit because I was like, we're in the same magazine together. And I was like, and everybody in the office was like, okay, calm down, calm down. But you were so sweet and so nice, and I just saw you again a couple of weeks ago.
I know we were able to pass the torch on to our pal Javier Munoz from Hamilton, and man, you know it's so, I think about this often, that coming out, going public with my HIV status, like none of this was ever planned, you know, awards, accolades, being able to share your story on a platform. But the realities of going public with anything and releasing trauma and shame and really owning your story, I think is the lesson here of not just the awards and appreciation, but it's the it's the realization that you have a story to tell and that your story is your own. And if I can inspire other people to own their stories and live a life that's full of joy, and I just think life is meant to be lived. And when we hang on to secrets and shadows in our lives, we don't really get to truly live,
And but I think you kind of just said it. Like when we're diagnosed, and then we make that decision. But I always tell people, I don't feel like we choose advocacy. Advocacy chooses us.
100%. Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
It looks at you and says, you need to talk about this. You have the platform, you have the voice, you have the story, whatever it is, talk about it. And then all of a sudden, I tell people it's a little selfish because I do it first for my peace of mind. And
you have to.
And
if you're not doing it for yourself, who and what is it for? And I think that creates other issues down the road if you're not doing it for you,
Although we normally start the show off with Tony Morrison, how do you put it together? We already have some questions on the board for you. So can we start with
Great. Give them to me.
So it says, Tony, does a spiritual connection rank high in your daily routine to connect and be ready for your day? If yes, how specifically do you connect?
That's great. I do consider myself as a spiritual individual. I did grow up in an evangelical household, but I think the through line in adulthood really is it's really become a very faith expansive space for me. And when you are, I've had a chance to kind of look across a lot of different faiths, beliefs, belief structures, even, some astrologies in the world. And I think in this is a totally other lifetime, I think, but when you talk about astrologies, my Church of Tony sort of look there is if God is the God of the universe, does he not like govern the stars also? So I think within my own spirituality, there is connectiveness in all of it. Nature, science, organized religion, there is a connective tissue. So yes, to answer your question here, a spiritual connection does rank very high. I mean, I think that it's probably number one. I was talking a little bit about my morning routine and grounding myself and finding that tone for the day that is grounded in the spiritual connection. I think the spiritual connection really is about connecting with yourself and your body in relationship to really existing on this earth. So how do I specifically connect? Prayer is a big one. Whatever your version of prayer is, it could be meditation, it could be a subset of meditation, but I like to get a download in the morning. My morning routine is, again, very important to me. And if I get stressed, I do my breathing exercises, but faith and spirituality is very much how I put it together and how it puts me together in the end as well. It's a place that I'm able to put a burden on, and I think that is the true effectiveness of authentic faith and a really strong belief structure.
I grew up in a Catholic home, and I still, in the morning when I shower, it's my prayers, my connection to the universe, my spirit guides, and then my mantra. Wow. My mantra, put it all together. I feel like they can coexist.
Absolutely, and I was thinking as you were talking about that, in terms of connection, just music is where I connect with the world also. So creating music and really finding a place where music and spirituality and connection kind of bridge together, that really is my church.
Do you have a to-go song that is your okay, whatever mood I'm in, it connects me?
Oh my goodness. I have a few, I like really acoustic chill versions of really anything about pop songs, but I have a couple playlists with artists that people have probably not heard of, and Spotify super serves me a lot of a lot of these, which is great. So I'm all about new music, but any music that really inspires the soul or just makes you like kind of wake up. I live in this realm of vibey, acousticy, sort of a tropical house sort of vibe, and I have like an edit playlist if I'm editing video or photos. I was a professional photographer in my past life, and when I'm editing, I have just like an instrumental playlist that's very vibey that helps me like really focus and really get into my creative side of my brain.
That was just a personal curious question, because I do this when I'm working. When I'm working my I've gotten into YouTube because YouTube does this playlist of things that I've listened to.
Yeah.
And I go from like the Coda soundtrack, which is one of my favorites, to Tejano music. And then I go to 80s music, and then I go to Spanish. So that's really cool. Okay, we have more questions for you on the board. It's getting busy.
Oh my gosh, great. The questions are coming in, huh?
Tony, what is your path to success? How do you measure success in your life? And how do you express gratitude for possible blessings? 3 questions there.
I love that. How do I measure success in my own life? I think that, this is a very interesting one. You know, when I was a journalist, when I was working in morning news, I was working morning news for 10 years or so. I really didn't consider myself a journalist until the very end of that career. And sort of in the beginning and especially the middle, I was like, you know, I'm here at a major news network. I'm producing, I'm doing all these things, working with major talent, like doing the news gathering thing, doing all the things within the space. But I never considered myself a journalist until I was already in it, and I had started writing stories that really were becoming part of and moving public policy and affecting change. And it was well after those things started happening that I really considered myself a journalist. And now that I've been at GLAAD for almost a year, I am just now kind of considering myself an advocate or activist. I'd never labeled that myself on my own until quite recently. And I think I'm sharing that because for me, success has been measured after the fact, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And if I'm able to look back and say, wow, look at the year that I had. None of this was ever planned. I think for me, success is being able to stand in your power, to look back and see a month, a year, 5, 10 years ago, you are a completely different person. If you can look at any window of your past and say, wow, I'm a totally different person today than I was in this X amount of range of time, and you're able to apply yourself as improved or a completely different person, that's how I measure success. I measure success in growth in a very inexplicable way, an unplanned way. Like I moved to New York to be a fashion photographer, like a Vogue fashion photographer. That's what I wanted to do. I shot runway for years, and then I fell into TV, and then I'm now, because I started moving into inclusive reporting and writing about our community and eventually sharing my own story, I was able to move over to GLAAD and make that my full-time job. None of this was ever the plan. And I think if you can look back and say, wow, look at the growth that I've experienced in my own life, that is a measure of life success for me. And I love the expression of gratitude question, because I've been on the road, especially for Pride Month, really every week in the last 4 weeks, and I had been on the road a lot of last week, and I just had a moment yesterday to it took like 5 hours, clean the whole apartment, made dinner, and I was able to sit down and light a few candles and just like watch one of my shows. But I had a chance to just like sit down and decompress. And I find gratitude in the stillness. And I was just able to like, it was just like one of those picturesque moments. The sun was setting. It was like golden hour. It was stillness and quiet. I just like sat back on the couch to exhale. And I was like, wow, I just have gratitude to be in this moment, but to look around and look at this life that I have built, that I worked really hard for and built and brought in everything that's around me. And that's where I just recently, just yesterday, found some gratitude. So in terms of gratitude expression, I think it's the same as you were saying earlier. I like to let gratitude find me, but you have to be welcoming of that moment and that expression as well.
Because as you were talking about success, I don't know what your thought is on this. I have found in my 52 years of life that even in the projects or things that don't go the way other people thought it should go, but I still find success in that because I've learned a lesson. I walked away with some like, oh, next time.
Totally.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that if life is going as planned, you might be in trouble. You know?
Yeah. There's a saying in Spanish that says, uno pone, Dios dispone. Like you plan and God laughs, basically.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what you really want? Just hold on. I mean, but like you said, like I decided to put my emails on. I'm out of the office, which I work from home, which is kind of silly sometimes. But I put out of the office since Friday evening until tomorrow night, and which is something I'm a workaholic. I don't do that. But last night I made a ham sandwich, is one of my favorite things, and some tortilla chips, and I had a little bit of a soda in the fridge, and it was like midnight right before I went to bed. And I was like, this feels like the right moment for a sandwich. Like, and I just sat there and watched TV, and I was like, what a blessing to be able to do that and be able to.
And it's in the most simple, mundane things. You don't have to do anything for that. You just have to be in a welcoming place and mindset.
So here's another question for you. How would you recommend for others to start the work of shedding shame and shade from their lives? How do you continue to keep yours at bay today? Good question.
You know, I think when it comes to encouraging others to shed their shame and shadow, I just want to prompt the question of, are you tired? Aren't you tired yet? And that's paralleled with the caveat of, I think everyone is on their own journey, and you should be encouraged to make your own decisions for your life when you are ready. But I want to encourage anyone who's listening or is really kind of there. Like what did it for me was I was faced in a time during COVID when we were all locked down, and I had to really face myself because there was such loss that we all experienced, right? There was loss of our routines. There was loss of our social lives. There was physical loss of people and some of us people that we knew from that time. And I got put into a place where I really had to face my own demons because there was nothing else to do, you know? But I also really, I had to really, I came to a place where I was like, you know, my status, I had to give myself a reality check. And what I found was my status was and is the most managed thing in my life. So how dare I live in this shame and shadow of myself when so many people didn't even get the chance to live? And I was like, poor me, with my own sob story, you know? And that's when I started to write, and I really didn't program this as an essay or a public anything, but it needed to be plucked from my brain and put onto paper. And so whatever that process is for you of just remove whatever is the mobility for shame and shadow and anger and trauma to leave your brain, to leave your body, whatever vehicle that has to be, start that journey. For me, it was writing. For some people, it might be a song. For a lot of other people, it may not be anything creative. But I encourage you to start that journey with yourself. And I think if you are someone who's asking yourself these questions, you're already on the right path, the right journey, right? Because it starts with a self-assessment. It starts with looking at yourself in the mirror and giving yourself that reality check. And, shame and fear and trauma, the last half of this question, it's things that you have to keep control of. They don't completely go away. It's sometimes, it may not get better depending on the issue or traumas you're overcoming, but it does get easier. Yeah. And I think having that strength to strength and knowledge to kind of know what those troubling thoughts are re-entering your mind, or kind of recalibrating. My therapist and I call this putting your thoughts on trial, and being able to mitigate, okay, I've been in this place before, I felt like this before, and I can go in the direction that I always have gone with my thoughts, feelings, and actions, or I can pause, put my thoughts and emotions on trial, and really assess in a smart way where they're coming from, what the origin is, and really figure out what the correct and constructive path is, which takes time. I went through this quite recently in terms of I had a bit of a meltdown, and I was like, okay, I've been here before, I've had this feeling before, but I can go in this direction, which is destructive, but is my default because I have done that and I've trained my brain to do that. Or I can retrain my brain because I know better, right? And move in a better direction for me in my life. And that took a little longer. But you have to unlearn these things that we have ingrained in our mind. And a lot of people, myself included, it's a lot of trauma and reflexes and thought reflexes that have been ingrained within yourself from an early age, and unlearning all of that takes time. So a lot of my concurrency and keeping my shame at bay is to really just be in a space of self-awareness all the time, and really just giving yourself some grace.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of things that you said in there that I want to highlight. Like, number one, it doesn't matter how big of a profile job you have or how successful you are. Like, we all have those moments of doubt, and we all have a meltdown every once in a while. We're like, okay, where's the ice cream? I need to hide in the closet and eat this by myself and cry. Not that I've done that lately or anything, but and then also, as the question is like, and quite honestly, there's some of us, and I knock on wood, and I'm humbled to say this, but there's some of us that are privileged enough to have a platform, to have a voice, to not have an edit button that we're free to say what we want, because there are people, like you said, that don't have that freedom, that don't have that available to them. And sometimes, like when I was first diagnosed, I needed to follow people that already had the voice in order to find my own. And then once I can basically like swim on my own, then other people start following you. So good for you. I mean, I applaud you for the work to do, because I've been watching that now. So that means, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, like, I've gotten this question a lot too of the, what if I don't have a big platform to share my story? And I really want to take a second to dispel the myth that you have to have an audience or a platform to be able to share your story. Your story is the one thing people cannot take from you. Your experience. And I think that is a very powerful thing. So for me and my big coming out in a public way, I was in a place where I had built a social audience or a digital audience, but I was also a journalist and have created that space, I was in it, I thought that I had a bit of a responsibility to do things in that way that I did, but that was my journey, right? And that was my opportunity that I felt like I needed to seize on. But I don't want people to think that you have to have a huge audience or a following or any sort of thing to be a prerequisite to share your story, because that's so not the case. And again, like, your story is your superpower. It's the one thing that will get you through, and it's the one thing that will change lives and hearts around you.
Yeah, yes. I'm gonna on that one. I don't know what else to do right now. Yes, because it's whatever your story is, whether it's the coming out of the closet story, your diagnosis, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's you want to change who you are, or the way the world sees. Whatever your story is, it's your story. And I say this because I was outed when I first came out at 17, and although the moment was taken from me, I took the story back and said, no, okay, you took the moment, but the story is mine to tell.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think being able to own your story, especially in a very traumatic condition that you are in, I think says everything, and some people, in some situations you're forced into that, but in some weird way, I think you're always ready to do that. It's just about taking that first step, right? Oh, you know what? This triggers I was just talking to someone about drag queens and like the power of the wig or heels, and you have friends or really anyone who steps into drag and they become this other persona, and drag queens are known for their vicious tongue and very quick quips, and you just become this gloriously wonderful and confident person when that wig goes on your hair. But I mention this because the moral of all that is that confidence and strength was always in that person.
Yeah.
It's about finding that agility and that space to be able to release that energy in that way. And I think that is true for all of us when it comes down to being able to share a bit of yourself that might feel unsafe or a little more vulnerable than you would usually do. But that's what it's all about. And we all have that strength within us.
And just think about folks who are watching, think about superheroes. They have their costumes that make them superheroes. For me, it's my cowboy boots. Anytime I have a chance to put on my cowboy boots, I mean, let me tell you, like, the drawl comes on and it's like Super Daniel, like, what's up? Like,
I love it. There's something in a good boot. I will say, similar to heels, but a boot with the solid heel that makes that just like powerful clack and noise on like a wooden floor. Ooh, girl, I'm in charge.
All right, next time you come out here, we have to go out in our boots somewhere.
Oh my God, I love it.
Clack our way. Find some restaurant with hardwood floor so we can make an entrance into there. So this next question, you were already kind of answering. It's what prompted you to release your shame around being HIV positive. Was it a team effort?
It was probably a team effort between all my multiple personalities, which I did talk about a bit ago, about kind of what led me to do that within context of it being COVID. But what kept me going is that I was really pouring all of myself really out onto paper. And I found that a lot of my story, a lot of stories of individuals like mine who have dealt with an HIV diagnosis, who are on proper medication, who are undetectable, who have been really treated really badly by people and friends around them. I think that story had not really been told. And, Billy Porter had talked about his status, a feud, probably within this time frame also. So there was a lot of things in the background and in media that was like, to me, I took them as signs as keep moving forward. This is what you should be doing. But again, like what really I didn't see out there in media were stories like mine, stories like ours, or a few celebrity stories. But I wanted to be very explicit in saying, this is the challenges I had in dating. These are the challenges I had with friends making HIV/AIDS jokes at a brunch that affected me in a way that I felt like I had to live in secrecy about it, and how painful that was, and how long I held on to that. I needed people to really realize the full story. And once I was able to craft that into a personal essay in a story for the world to see, I knew that that was something that I needed to do. And I will never forget the day that Publish Live, my editor, called me and said, "Hey, I just wanted to check in on you. My mouse is over the publish button, and I wanted to check with you if this is something you really wanted to do, because once it's out there, and there are no takebacks. And I just wanted to be very intentional with doing this." And I took a breath. And on that call together, we hit publish together. And I will never forget, it was just once I saw it live and published out, it was like a bodily exhale. Just a complete exhale from all parts of my body. And I knew that's exactly what I needed to do and what needed to be done in that moment.
I've been in this business now I'll be 23 years diagnosed this September. And so I came in before social media, before anything was out there. And it was only local newspapers and a couple of national things. But then as I got into acting, really strong about 14 years ago, and social media was kicking off and some things were starting to come up. And I mean, as a lot of people do, I started to Google myself and saw all these things that were out there about me. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I remember the first agent that I had in LA that said, you need to stop advocating or you're not going to have a career in acting. And at that moment, I had to decide, like, do you just give up everything that you've been working on for so long?
Yeah.
That's really a part of your identity now. Like, you can't just erase that you're HIV positive. People are not going to forget that. And there was this moment of, I'm feeling like was for you. It's like, okay, like deep end off the diving board, and there's no going back. There's no going back.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it was. And I knew that if I did it in a way like this that was so public, it was like ripping a Band-Aid off, right? I didn't have to choose between telling a group of friends or a friend or a family member. It was an all-in sort of a decision that really played into that bodily exhale, because there was no secrets out, you know. And I was like, if I'm able to share this, then nothing is off the table. You know, this is the one thing I kept hidden away from everyone for 8 years or so at the time. And I felt like if I was able to do it that way and tell everybody at the same time and inspire others to live an authentic life, huge win. But I was like, I have nothing else to keep a secret. It really inspired me to live fully and authentically, because I had truly nothing else to hide.
There's a saying that says, "Si lo sabe Dios, que lo sepa el mundo." If God knows, let the world know. And I found out about my diagnosis with my family in the hospital room with me. I asked them not to leave when the doctor was going to give me my diagnosis, which has its good and bad. I feel like now I would have waited to tell them myself in my own way.
Yeah.
But same way, like once I was out, I was like, they know, let the world know. Like,
you were forced to handle it. And I think this is a card that I was able to deal myself, you know? So I think that being able to take ownership of it, I think, is the power.
So we have another question. Considering your success in the public arena, how do you manage through the trolls and haters on a daily basis? How do you protect your core from the cruelty and the hate that can be expressed? Do you have haters?
I
would
do. I do. I
I would
think
imagine Tony having haters.
it's, listen, I'm umming here because I have to tread lightly. And for my bosses who might be watching, I am a bit of a firecracker on social media, and I've been having to do my own strategies around this. But the idea really is to not let the trolls and haters manage you. That's the one thing. That's what they want, right? And for the most part, if I am compelled to comment or highlighted a hateful statement or comment, I think the best thing that you can do if you're going to go there is to express love. Honestly, a lot of these people who are not robots, a lot of these people who are commenting are very shameful, loveless individuals who are just taking out their own self-trauma and self-hate in a comment. And that's really, that's my opinion on it. But the best thing you can do is there are some features and things online that you can do, blocking, muting, all those things. Use all those to your advantage. And again, I think I said at the beginning of our time together here is creating boundaries for yourself. Boundaries are for you. When you create boundaries on social media, sure, it can be to keep the haters out, but boundaries should be for you. So if you're programming boundaries for yourself, that might mean less screen time. That might mean not commenting on certain things to pull in haters and trolls into your account. It could be just deleting comments or reporting people, and just being mindful where you yourself show up on social media as well. But
one of my pet peeves is scrolling on TikTok and having people replying to their haters, and I'm like, why are you spending that moment when you have a lot of followers?
yeah, just honestly pay them no mind, because when you do mind them, you're really exerting energy on them where you could be using that energy elsewhere.
Yeah.
So paying them no mind and using that energy elsewhere, I think, is the best strategy in terms of handling hateful expressions, especially online, especially for someone of the queer community online, because there is a lot of hate there, and the social media platforms are not doing enough to make queer people safe on those platforms.
Yeah, I was in a spiritual seminar before the lockdown, and we were talking about going online and doing readings and doing energy work and people coming at you, and the instructor made a really good point and said, these are normally people that are used to being bashed in a way because they can't be their authentic selves, because they live in a structured world, etc. And they're using you as their punching bag because they don't know how to fight back. 100%. And when I thought about it that way, I was like, wow, how sad that you're lashing out so hard that you just don't care who you hurt.
100%.
You know what? I mean, that's a lot of hurt, because I remember being young and being in pain and being a rebel teenager before I came out. And then once I came out, I was like, girl, I'm out. I'm like, I'm done being hateful. Like, we're done with that part. There's too much energy. But once I looked at it that way, and I can respond to them and go, you know what? Have a great day. Like, I hope you find your truth. And I've actually made some friends on TikTok that messaged me private. It's like, nobody ever said that to me. And I'm like, well, maybe that's what you needed. So I think we answered the second part. How do you protect your core? Yes, we talked about that, but removing, deleting, blocking.
Yeah, creating boundaries for yourself.
So can we talk a little bit, because I wanted to bring back the magazine and this, because being on the cover of a magazine is a big deal. So once you do that, and you're like, okay, like
I
not
remain blown away, to be totally honest with you. I
okay. The song in the background, before you say that, the song in the background of my head when I see this is like, I'm coming out. Like I feel like that's the intro song to it, because it's from like not. Does that make sense? Like here I am, cover of a magazine. What did that? What was your inner conversation, and what did that do for your spirit?
Man, I think especially for that cover, it was a true sign of alignment for me, and assurance that what I did was exactly what I needed to do, and to be a literal poster boy for equity and representation in this space. That couldn't be planned, and to be able to know that my story and my image was and is something that could help someone else avoid the challenges and the sorrow and the trauma that I endured for 8 years plus, then it was all weirdly worth it. Because I think when we all come out in some way with our authenticity and be able to share your stories so deeply, what is also rooted in that, other than doing it for yourself, is the hope that you are able to prevent someone else from going through that trauma and pain that you did. So if someone can read my story and come out of their shadow and shame and not hold on to it for 5, 10, 15 years, then I've done my job. And that's what I want to inspire other people, is to see my story and to know that it's going to be okay, and that there are other people like you. You are not alone. That alone is worth it for me.
Because as somebody slightly older, Tony,
slightly
by days, we're basic. But yeah, I can understand that, because when people early on, when I started to make a bigger splash in more national environments, we were like, hey, we would like to highlight your story. And I was like, whoa, like, even though I done it in Houston, where I started a lot of my advocacy, once it started getting bigger, you're like, and like you said, even in print, you're like, there's no way of taking it back. And as you both were seeing, I was scrolling through the page. So make sure you go check out HIV Plus magazine, HIVplusmag.com. You can find that story plus other stories. You can find all of the other people in the magazine. There's, as I said, it's 25 people. Go check them out. It's in the magazine. You can still get the hard copy too. So, and if you're in the Southern California area, get in touch with me. I have a bunch of copies. I got a bunch of copies, and then everywhere I would go to any office, I'm like, oh, more copies. Let's take them home.
I know when they all got delivered, because they really went out to a lot of LGBT centers and clinics across the country, and every few weeks, someone would send me a screen grab. I think in some markets, some queer bars got them also. When you walk into an LGBT bar, there's like a rack of your, it used to be New Now, Next, and publications and stuff. So it was a fun era for me to get surprise check-ins from friends all over the place, seeing the cover. So, and that to me, again, as what I was saying, it's visibility and representation epitomized. So if I can help change someone's life by being a representation, being a possibility model myself, let's go.
Cool. So we're about that point in the show where I like to ask my guests to share some words of wisdom with the audience. Tony Morrison, what words of wisdom do you have for us?
Oh my gosh. I feel like
Not that you haven't shared a bunch already.
I was like, I think I've dropped a few gems here myself, but I think especially in the time that we are in now and seeing what the queer community is being put through, I think as just as you had flashed on there, it's to know that we're not alone and we are loved. And it's about finding community. Let me back that up. It's about letting community and family find you. This is what I found also when I came out about my status and to discover others like myself, and my story. It's the queer community is magical in the sense that it's not just a family that you find, it's a family that finds you. So if you feel like you are lacking in connection, I think it's a signal for you to be a little bit more open, and maybe that starts with yourself and allowing family to find you, because that family and connection is there. It really is about allowing that into your life and granting yourself permission to love and be loved. I think a lot of us, especially queer folks out there, they come from a place to where we may not feel like we're allowed to love or be loved, but we have to get to a place in adulthood, and hopefully young people, we have to teach our young queer. I'm wearing my I support LGBT youth GLAAD shirt today. It's about showing our young people that they are in charge of their own destiny in a way, and they are allowed to love and be loved. So the sooner we grant ourselves permission to love and be loved, I think that's when we truly are able to live.
I think that's beautiful, because definitely diagnosis like HIV for a lot of folks immediately brings in the idea that I am no longer worthy of fill in the blank. And it takes sometimes a little time, but to be able to get back there to say, I am worthy of, let the universe bring it to me. That's really awesome. Before we go, we have about 8 more minutes, but I want to talk about GLAAD. Don't want to miss that.
Yes, absolutely.
So here's the website. I'm going to scroll through the website. Tell us why the decision to move to GLAAD, and what do you do there, and what can we do to support?
Yeah, well, as I was kind of saying a little bit of allowing yourself to be found, I was towards the tail end of my career at Good Morning America and doing morning news for a while. I had been covering a lot of LGBTQ plus stories. I was telling reporting on a lot of issues around queer people and the state of LGBTQ in America. And I was externally facing and internally facing at ABC and across Disney, who owns ABC and ABC News. I was able to stand up a community of queer journalists across the network and to our own stations across the country. And really it was about finding family and being able to be authentically yourself in the workplace. So there's a few layers in that. And so throughout a lot of that work, professionally, personally, and as a journalist also, and really applying the relearning that LGBT people are not issues. LGBTQ people are people. And being able to carry that relearning through a major news network was really important for me. So I had started working with GLAAD because GLAAD works in media advocacy and applying fair and accurate representation across all media, from TV, film, journalism, gaming, publishing, all the media we can consume. And I was working with GLAAD on several projects to help amplify and report correctly on the community. And then conversations eventually became, what if you came here and worked for GLAAD? And so those conversations evolved after a few months, and the opportunity came about to be their senior director of communications for the organization. So my job really is a lot of programmatic communications, a lot of the programs that we do, and being a journalist, working with journalists at all levels across the country, from local, state, national markets, and then being able to communicate in a quite literal form all the important work that we're doing, from our research reports to the important work we're doing with training and consulting. All of it kind of lands on my desk, which is a lot of what I was doing at Good Morning America, running the digital and social media spaces. It was so advantageous, because you work in the social space, to know what everybody was doing, be in everybody's business. So that is my nature. And I think being a comms person in this space, that really is kind of the same mindset, is knowing what everybody's doing, what everybody's talking about, what everybody's projects are, and being able to super serve our community and our audiences with what queer representation, what queer joy, what accurate visibility looks like across all media that we consume. So in a nutshell, that's my job. And I love that this is a job, and it's definitely one that has found me, and I'm able to fight for representation and visibility like my own in a full-time capacity. So it's really cool.
Well, we're extremely proud of you and happy that you're there. Now that I've had the chance not only to to follow you, but to meet you in person and know your energy. By the way, folks, he's such a sweetheart in person. Just if you ever bump into him, he's such a cool guy. And to take the time, I know you're very busy, to take the time to be here today, it really means a lot to me, and we appreciate it. And just know that Little Mexican Productions Inc., in whatever capacity that we could be of use for GLAAD, let us know. We're there for you.
I love it.
And for everybody else, there's a donate button on the website, so go check them out. GLAAD.org. Go check out. Everybody knows we're not a political show, but we need you right now. We need
all the support. And I was just gonna say before we hop off, thank you for all you do and creating this space for conversations like this. You know, when I'm talking to journalists, especially the network news of it all. Oh, thank you, David. Oh my God, I appreciate you for watching. I was gonna say, a lot of times we have conversations about queer people and issues on news media, but you can't really have a solid conversation in like a 1, 2, or 3 minute segment or in a scripted piece, right? So creating spaces like this for our community to have conversations like this is incredibly powerful, and it does change lives. So thanks for what you're doing and for creating this space.
My pleasure. A lot of people tell me, oh, it's an hour? I don't know that I can talk for an hour. I'm like, don't worry.
Ooh, let me tell you.
I can make you talk for an hour.
You can talk for an hour, girl. Oh my God.
Grab your coffee, sit down. We're going on for a long run right here.
Absolutely.
For everybody, again, follow Tony. We've got his Instagram right here. Go check him out at Instagram.com, the Tony Morrison. Check him out for all of the things. Go check out GLAAD.org. Remember, it's org to donate, to read stories. And I was so excited to see that you have RuPaul's Mexico on there, because I am obsessed.
Yes.
Being from Mexico, I am. And then,
okay, and this is part of the. Oh, go for it.
Pass this on to whom. The fact that it's in Spanish, the fact that the
Huge.
story. Okay, I'm not gonna cry. But as I used to not be so. I used to be like, I have representation. I'm good. But when I saw that, as I was putting together today's show, and I saw that the story on RuPaul's Mexico was in Spanish, that to me was like, I felt like GLAAD was for me finally. I don't know if this makes sense. Like,
I love that. I love to hear that. And I will only say, because we're streaming, we had a lot of conversations about that, and I'm very excited to really help our Spanish language representation team expand into these areas, that we're able to do recaps like this and work with your Paramount Pluses on these endeavors is a big deal. So I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you for that. And this is what it's all about, representation and visibility at all levels. So I will definitely let the team know, and definitely can count on more of that kind of content.
Cool. So I'll put out the invitation to whomever is the Spanish speaker folks at GLAAD. Please come on the show and do a Spanish interview so that we can show all of the Latinas, Latinx people out there that speak Spanish.
I love that.
We are being represented and that we should support it.
I love a live booking. This is what we're good at.
Calling you out here, Tony.
I love it.
What else can I do? Like, have a microphone. We'll use it.
100%. I'm with you on that.
All right. I'm going to put you in the green room. But again, thank you so much for being here, everybody. Tony Morrison, Senior Director of Communications at GLAAD, joining us today for the show and for making time. We booked this a couple of times because I wanted to make sure that we had you on the show.
A long time coming. Thank you.
Javier,
thank you everybody for your questions. I see you down there. Thank you.
And Javier, I want you on the show too, so we're going to have him on the show. All right, I'm going to put you in the green room before I say goodbye to you, and I'll be back for you in just a second. Thank you so much. For everybody watching, thank you. I hope you got out of this conversation as much as I did. Please, if you have any questions, if you didn't ask, if you're watching this on replay, you can ask questions and I'll make sure I get them to Tony. A couple of notes before we go. Where is it? Here we go. Remember, we got Grumpy Bunny in the Colors Game in English and Spanish. Get your book now in English and Spanish, $24 signed and delivered. Go over to my website, littlemectroproductions.com, Grumpy Bunny, and it's you pay for delivery, and I signed it, so let me know who to sign it for. Awakenings, go check out Wayne Kilgo II over at Awakenings. He called the number 949-457-0797 for more information on when he's there, but you can do you can book him on the phone, and then check us out on Fridays for Zodiacs. And then the alignment. If you are looking for a transpersonal coach, give me a call, drop me an email. There's my email address. We like to identify, acknowledge, and remove barriers. We do one-on-one groups, team building workshops, in person or virtual. And then if you buy the whole 8 session series, you get a free deck of cards that we'll give you. Go check it out. Go check out Tony at the Plus Magazine. And for now, I want to thank all of you for watching. Thank you, Tony, for being on the show. We'll see you folks next time. Remember, hey, put it together.